Welcome back everyone. In today's video we're going to be over the full cost and the parts required to W58 manual swap your SC400. If you're new here, I've documented the full process of me manual swapping my 95 SC400 here on YouTube and on my social media accounts. I get comments and DMs all the time asking about what parts I used and how much my manual swap cost, so I figured I'd make a full video explaining everything. I put together a Google Doc with all of the parts and pricing associated with them, as well as links on where to get everything. There's a few parts that you'll have to source yourself, so I didn't really add any links. If you're interested in just checking out that list, I'll leave it linked in the description below, but if you're more of a visual learner, I'm going to click through and show you how I picked everything out. Now before we dive into that list, let me introduce you to my SC400. It's a 1995, originally with a 4-speed automatic, and it was approaching 200,000 miles. It's at 195 right now, I believe, and the transmission was starting to show its age, so rather than doing a full service on it, I figured what better time to do a manual swap than right now. So I started doing a little bit of research into the forums and the Facebook groups, and that's kind of how I came together with this parts list and figuring out everything I wanted to do. And I was going to wait a little bit longer before doing the swap, but a friend of mine happened to have a W58 on hand that he was willing to give to me for a good deal. So I just went ahead and jumped in and kind of just learned as I went. As I mentioned earlier, I did make a full video of that swap process, so if you're interested in checking that out, I'll link that in the top corner of this video. But in the meantime, let's jump into this parts list. So obviously starting out, I chose to go with a W58 transmission as we discussed. I was able to pick one up locally for $1,000. The price on this will kind of vary depending on your area and the availability of it, and obviously the mileage and condition. I think around $1,000 was about the average that I saw for the total cost of them. Then to pair up with that, I had to source a manual drive shaft. It came with a drive shaft out of a Supra, but the wheelbase is shorter on the Supra, so it didn't actually fit. So I went and got a manual SC400 drive shaft, also off of Marketplace, for $200 cash. And from what I've seen, that's a pretty standard price for these drive shafts, at least at the time and location of making this video. Next up on our list is obviously going to be the adapter kit to mount your W58 to the 1UZ. There's a couple different kits on the market. I've discussed them before on my social media, but I chose to go with the XAT Racing Kit adapter. This is a super nice kit. Everything worked out perfectly fine. I've heard mixed things, but in my opinion, everything was perfect. I couldn't have asked for a better kit, really. I have listed here what I spent in total on the kit. It was $1,400 and some change. Now that price will vary depending on what options you go with. I listed all the options that I chose down below, and the price of each option and add-on as well. But you can change things to kind of mess with this price. You could choose a different clutch, different hardware, different flywheel. But if you click on the link that I provided, it'll take you to XAT Racing's website, and the base cost of the adapter is $485. And then as you add your clutch and your feed lines and your master cylinder, it'll change the price of that. So for example, if I go down the list and pick everything that I chose for my kit, I went ahead and did the add throwout bearing and fittings for single disc clutch, which adds $120. Then I chose the OEM cruiser style master cylinder, and that was $49.99. For the clutch feed line, I chose 36 inches, which is an additional $44. Then I also chose 36 inches for the bleed line, which is an additional $59. Then for the flywheel, XAT Racing recommended that I use the lightweight aluminum flywheel. This was an extra $385. I chose the ARP hardware, the $7 pilot bearing. For the clutch, they recommended me the Stage 2 XAT Racing clutch, so that was $249. Then for the pressure plate bolts, I just went with the standard XAT grade bolts. This is an additional $9. And then there's a final option you'll see here about ATEMU for 98 plus vehicles. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. To the best of my knowledge, this is essentially just an emulator that tells the ECU that the transmission is still there. It's only required on 98 plus models or the models with VVTi, I believe. I have a 95 and I was non-VVTi, so I didn't have to worry about this. I got no codes or anything like that, and everything runs perfectly fine without it. But if you do have a 98 plus, you do need to get this or else you're going to throw a code. I'm sure there's probably some other way around it, like some custom harness you could do. But if you want to do this, it's going to be an additional $235, which would bring your total to just under $1,700. But in my case, I did not need it, so that brought us to that $1,452 range. And as you saw when I was clicking through, you could adjust the price and make it a little bit cheaper or a little bit more depending on your budget. They have plenty of different options for the flywheel and the clutch. That sums up everything that I got from XAT Racing's website. To move forward, I had to source a set of pedals. So for the clutch pedal, there's a couple different options. I chose to go with Excessive Manufacturing. I picked their pedal up on Enjuku Racing's website, but you can also get it straight from Excessive. Either way, it'll cost you $200 before shipping. And then next up, I had to get a manual brake pedal. The automatic brake pedal will collide or kind of touch your clutch pedal once you have it installed. So you can either cut your automatic pedal in half or source a manual one. You can get one straight from Toyota or Lexus. I was able to pick one up for $130 out of a SC400. Or you could go to Drift Motion and they sell a full pedal kit of a manual brake pedal and clutch pedal. I didn't go that route, but I do have that linked if you'd rather buy them together. That'll hit you about $360. Next up on the list, I have some cosmetic things listed. None of this stuff is mandatory. It's all just things I chose to kind of clean up the interior and help with a little bit of noise. So starting off, we have this tunnel cover. There's a couple different places you can get these. Toyota makes them. So if you go on eBay, you can find them. I was able to find this website, though, called climbgear.com. They sell a bunch of OEM Toyota parts and different things like that. They have these for a bunch of different cars, not just the SC chassis. So I was able to find this one. It's a shifter boot and tunnel panel. So it kind of seals up the trans tunnel after you're done with the swap. There's going to be a big gaping hole there, whether you cut a hole for the direct mount or you widened the automatic hole for the tripod style like I did. There's going to be a hole and there's going to be noise. So adding this panel to block that off, especially with the rubber boot, definitely helps to reduce some of that noise and vibration. And then on top of that, I also have a shifter bezel listed on here. You could probably find an OEM one on eBay, but they're going to be pretty expensive, especially if you want one that's not damaged. But if you check out Z30 Concepts website, they have some that are produced through Corn Carbon that look identical to the OEM ones. I have one of these in my car, and it's a perfect fit. I love everything about it. It's right down to the leather and the finish on the plastic. Unfortunately, they are quite frequently sold out because of how good quality they are. Everybody's buying them. But they are at a really good price, and you can get them in a standard finish or carbon fiber, and you can also get them for right-hand drive. Now, last but not least, there is a final thing listed here on the cosmetics list. This is definitely not mandatory, but I chose to do this in my SC to clean up the inside, and a lot of people have messaged me about it, wondering how I did it or where I got the part from. So if you go to Auto Extrude's website, they sell these ashtray delete panels. You can just get a regular block off, or you can get one with switch holes in it. I got one with 4 switch holes, and I put 19 millimeter switches in there. And this is how I relocated the buttons for my heated seats and my traction control. I also have my neutral safety switch on there for the time being before I wire up an actual clutch position switch. But you can get these ashtray delete panels. They have an example on the website here. And then to fill those spaces, they have a recommended seller, but I also was able to find some buttons on Amazon. If you click this link below, you can get silver or black. I chose black to blend in with my interior, but they have these switches for $9 a piece, and there's a variety of colors. I chose latching switches, which means when you press it, it stays in until you press it again, or you could get a momentary switch, which is the one where you click it and immediately pops back out. Depends on what you're using the switches for, really. So if you're interested in cleaning your interior up like this, definitely check out those ashtray delete panels. Now that brings us to the end of our list. So the total cost for my SC400 manual swap was $3,382.94. And this is just the retail price of everything. This doesn't include any of the tax or shipping that I paid. So unfortunately, the price will be a tad bit higher. But just to give you a general idea, that's what you'd be looking at spending if you go the same route I did. Now, if you want to go with a 6-speed CD swap, you're probably going to be spending closer to $5,000, depending on where you're getting your parts from. Or if you're doing a different swap like an R154 or an AR5 or something. I think those swaps are a little bit more expensive. This is kind of on the cheaper end, but I have seen some people say they've done this for even cheaper. But I figured I'd make this video for everyone who's curious about all the parts and the cost. And let me know down below, if you did your manual swap, how much did it cost you to get it all finished? I'd love to hear.